Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, it was an odd week for a lot of us out there who rely on something called YouTube TV, to keep track of the games going on.
Yeah.
We had a little bit of a dispute, apparently, between YouTube and Disney, and a good number of the games were just not available to many of us in the viewing public. I am not a media reporter. It felt an awful lot like a shakedown of people trying to get us to subscribe to the ESPN app, but we will not make the show about that, Dan.
We can.
We probably should, but instead, let's talk about some of the chaos we saw in the ACC. Let's talk about some SEC escape artists. Let's talk maybe about some clarity in the Big 12 and beyond, Dan. Let's talk about Hugh Freeze maybe coaching his last game at Auburn,
perhaps,
after scoring 3 points at home against arguably the worst team in the SEC. Welcome, Verballerhood. I am Ty. He is Dan. On today's episode, we are here to recap all that Week 10 had in store. We do have a game going on right now between Cincinnati and Utah, as well as your Dodgers in the World Series. Man. Game 7 extra innings. So
we're in what are we going into now? The top of the 11th?
I think the bottom of the 10th.
No, the Blue Jays went 1, 2, 3. By the time you listen to this is going to be meaningless, obviously. But Yamamoto took them down. First 1, 2,
okay,
3.
That's right. That's right. So top of the 11th. So we will get some real-time reactions, provided that the game is over by the time we're done. I guess nothing should be taken for granted given the way this series has gone, Dan. But alas, here we are.
Yes.
To talk about college football Week 10, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. I have a lot of thoughts. I nicknamed it Scalpel Saturday, and in a lot of instances, when I say Scalpel Saturday, rip them apart.
Rip them apart, yeah.
A lot of instances that was apt. And there were, even if it wasn't like, Baylor beating UCF, that felt surgical to me. The way that Baylor got off the field on third down. You probably didn't expect us to lead with Baylor UCF right after the 11th inning of the World Series, but we keep you on your toes.
Right.
No, there were a lot of, there were a lot of offensive performances, defensive performances that just got it right in Week 10. So I'm very excited to talk about this. You had a weird Notre Dame Penn State, I suppose, Saturday. Oregon didn't play this week. And across the sport, though, I got a lot of thoughts, and we've got a lot to say.
Number 8, Georgia Tech. Number 9, Vanderbilt. Number 10, Miami. Number 14, Tennessee. And number 22, Houston. 5 top 25 teams all go down. We will see what this late night game has in store between Cincinnati and Utah. At last check, Utah was up fairly significantly, but it was still relatively early. So
yes,
a lot going on. Why don't we start, though, with the one that I think really got the day started? It wasn't necessarily a loss by the highest-ranked team this week, but the SMU-Miami game is one that definitely animated a number of folks that write into us. You and I, of course, were doing a little bit and just kind of dipped our toes in on a watch-along stream at some point this afternoon. Obviously had some stuff to talk about with this Miami SMU game, but 26-20 was your final. The game was played at SMU. It did go into overtime. I think the bigger national story is probably that Miami's playoff run essentially ended
right
with this loss. The more zoomed in, maybe the more nuanced view is that SMU didn't play a perfect game, but SMU got some clutch play when they needed it out of Kevin Jennings, his receivers, their defense in crunch time, and especially in overtime to get a hard-fought win. This is what I tend to look for this time of year. It is not teams blowing out other teams, though there is certainly a place for that. But the deeper you get into the season, as teams start getting a little bit nicked up, start getting a little bit more tired, start getting maybe googly-eyed over what the future could have in store for them with respect to their conferences, perhaps the playoffs. It is teams that find ways to win ugly when they have to, and SMU did that.
Yes.
So I don't want to make this all about Miami. I want to credit SMU. They did just give Rhett Lashley a big contract extension in advance of this game. What a better way to celebrate it than to knock off the number 10 team in the land?
Yes. Miami, in a lot of ways, did not play winning football. right? That they struggled at times. Obviously, Kevin Jennings had his injury. They were able to take advantage of opportunities, which is what quality teams do. SMU is definitely quality, but they're not where they were last year. Dodgers just hit a home run.
I saw Will Smith. Yeah.
Will Smith. Sorry, Ty. This is the best you're gonna get from me.
It's
That's just a
okay.
plain. Miami had 12 penalties for 90 some odd yards.
Yeah.
Some of which were, to me, kind of Bush League calls. There was questionable officiating, and we can lead every show with that. Like, yes, we acknowledge there's questionable officiating in each of these games. There are calls that are going to go against your team that you can't believe, and you're right. In this instance, Miami was just a sloppy team today at times. They weren't getting the explosion plays that they needed at times consistently. They ran the ball fine. Carson Beck's first interception was not his fault. That was on the receiver. The game sealing, or the interception that helped to set up the game-winning run for SMU in overtime, was his fault. He was late, and he threw it directly to an SMU player over the middle. That was on him, and it just seems like Miami right now can't figure out different ways to win when they need to. And you're right, and it's just the circumstance of their season that they're now effectively out of the playoff race, even if they finish 10-2 with the way the math looks in the ACC right now, with how wide open at the top. Yeah. Though now we have Georgia Tech with a lot. Like it is, it's getting a little bit wild. But it's, those I think it was 1 3rd down and 1 4th down where Miami decided to run it straight up the middle into like a 9-man box. Like, I've seen that as an Oregon fan. You've seen that as a fan of a team that makes bad calls in those spots. I don't know if Mario Cristobal is leaning on Shannon Dawson to make those calls, but it seems like in a number of ways, this offense just gets worse by the week. And it's concerning.
So what's interesting is, and people who listen to this show and have for a while know the deal with us and Cristobal. We have never been shy about the Cristobal criticism, especially in these late game situations. I watched this in real time. I know you did too. I watched it back after the fact just to make sure I didn't miss anything. This was a different kind of loss than the one that we talk about a lot. When we do the dunk fest on Mario, it is not because of games like this. This wasn't so much a game that they lost for being conservative. This was a game they lost because they were sloppy. You mentioned the penalties, right? 12 for 96 yards. As I know you do, I often go out to State of the U, great Miami website, talks about these types of games with a lot of personality. And one of the things that they brought up in the aftermath of this one was, hey, Cristobal's been talking about fixing this penalty issue now for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like it's fixed. If anything, it's getting a little bit worse. And it wasn't so much just penalties. It was critical mistakes. It was a bobble by JoJo Trader, who had a good game otherwise, but a bobble that handed an interception.
Just a bad play. Doesn't mean he's a bad player, yeah.
Over to SMU. It was obviously, as you mentioned, that interception by Carson Beck down at the goal line, a badly underthrown ball at the goal line in overtime that essentially ended the game. So, as you said, yeah, Miami's not going to play for the ACC. They're most likely not going to play in the playoff. From Brad Powers out on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Cristobal is now 7-5 in his last 12 games. That includes 4 losses in which the Canes were favored by at least 7 points. So that is not a great look, and I'm sure there is mass frustration throughout the Miami fan base. One final word, though, on SMU, because this is a big win for SMU.
Yeah.
Kevin Jennings is an absolute menace. He is an absolute menace. No play is ever over when you've got Kevin Jennings.
Well, and he almost, not to cut you off, but I'm going to cut you off real quickly. They couldn't run the ball today against
They couldn't run the ball. No,
so he had to be.
He had to be.
Yes, the entire offense had to be anything he could figure out on the fly, buying time. Yeah.
And so between him and Jordan Hudson, yes, the other Jordan Hudson, they had a monster game. And they are not out of this ACC race. They are going to need to win out. They are going to need to get some help from Virginia, from Duke. They got a little bit of help perhaps from Georgia Tech here, which we'll talk about in a second. But again, I think the encouraging takeaway for SMU, as you say all the time, winning is a skill. Can you win a game like this against a good team when you're not at your best? And they did it.
Yes.
They did it. 26-20 was your final in overtime. A mammoth win for SMU. What a better way to celebrate.
Yeah, obviously also the connective tissue with Rhett Lashley coaching with Manny Diaz at Miami, bringing over Miami transfers to SMU. Not that there's necessarily bad blood, but obviously there is the overlap across this sport is vast, and very cool to see for SMU. They rushed the field. This was still a playoff team last year.
It was, yeah.
That's not a term we've used about Miami, but good for SMU. And, if you're a Miami fan, you try to take some of the positives away from this game and hope that they can finish strong. It's a weird sport. It's a weird conference. You never know. I hope Miami can somehow, some way stay locked in or get more locked in.
The chaos in the ACC did not just end there. This evening, we saw NC State knock off Georgia Tech. 48-36, I believe, was the final score. There were a lot of points in this one. There were a lot of points in Duke's shootout win over Clemson, 46-45 earlier in the day. And though there weren't as many points, I thought a solid effort from Virginia, which went on the road and beat Cal by a 31-21 score. So the way that the ACC is shaping up, and I do want to talk a little bit more about this Georgia Tech-NC State game, but weirdly enough, Duke and Virginia, which play in, I believe, 2 weeks, are in a very, very advantageous position down the stretch here. Georgia Tech is still very much in this thing despite their loss. But alas, we've got Duke, we've got Virginia, we've got some different teams this time around at the top of the ACC, and they just keep winning.
Buddy, Virginia's, 8-1?
Yeah.
Duke takes down Clemson 46-45?
Going for 2, yeah.
I mean, it's cartoonish. It's ridiculous. I love the ACC so very much because look, I watched as much of the Georgia Tech game as I could. This team was not bad at all on offense. Every time I looked up, Haynes King was making another play. And it just so happens that their defense was abused by NC State. And you know what? Good for NC State. Good for the ACC. Happy to see it. I like the wide open nature of this all is terrific across basically every conference but the Big Ten right now. It's great.
Well, that's true. I mean, we've got so many wide open conferences. As you said, 3 of the 4, I think more likely than not, are going to have some odd tie-breaking situations. We would be here for 3 hours trying to talk through all of them in the ACC. When you and I did our little afternoon stream, I talked through a couple of them on the ACC side, and it really does not take much to really throw the whole thing into more of a tailspin. But right now, I would much rather be Duke. I'd much rather be Virginia than obviously a team like Miami. And SMU is still kind of on the periphery, would need a lot of help. But I think what makes it interesting for the Verballerhood, as I know many people have written in and talked about this over the years, there's some new teams up there. There's a pretty good chance we're going to get a new team in the playoff, or at least a new series of teams in the ACC championship game. You're right to say that Georgia Tech looked pretty good everywhere other than defense.
Other than arguably the most important side of the ball, Georgia Tech was right there.
I mean, every time I looked up, it was either Haynes King doing something amazing or NC State going on a long chunk play and scoring more points. For them to put up 48 points on Georgia Tech here, I remember coming into this game when we previewed it on Thursday, the line was Georgia Tech -5.5. And it kind of felt a little fishy to us, right? Like, why is this where it's at? Even though Tech has had some close games along the way here, 5.5 just didn't fully track, but we both did steer into it. I'm glad we did. NC State with a big win now, knocking Georgia Tech from the ranks of the unbeaten. The Duke game was crazy.
By the way,
chaos.
Georgia Tech entered into this game as the number 47 or 48 points per drive defense in America, which is a number that's unheard of. And I don't think it's an accident. They've been great in the red zone. They will be good again. But as we talked about, this was not a perfect Georgia Tech team after that Clemson win. And I think they're still going to be really good. Continue, Duke.
It absolutely was that. So the Duke game was pure chaos, I think, in the best way possible. You had a full-blown shootout. Neither team was very interested in defense or in converting on third downs. Duke was 3 of 14. Clemson was 3 for 10. But oddly, they were a combined 8 for 8 on fourth down, which kind of added a little bit of flavor to this one. A great game for Darian Mensah. He was basically the entirety of Duke's offense, threw for 361. Again, they are in prime position now to finish first in the ACC via tiebreaker moving forward. And just to put a bow on the ACC, we had Virginia winning this game on the road 31-21. They came out firing. They jumped out to a quick lead. It was not exactly a runaway train of a game, but I thought it was a pretty solid effort. It would have been, I think, a little easier of a win had it not been for a missed field goal earlier in the game. And then there was a fake field goal that they attempted and didn't convert on. That being said, I still thought the Hoos were pretty sharp. They kept the chains moving. They were like 10 of 19 on third.
Well, they were better. They were better on the ground today than they've been
on the
last
ground.
few weeks. It was nice to see Tamari Taylor lead the way. Yeah,
it was a balanced effort. So they took care of business in a spot that I know a lot of people who had emailed us and written to us on social media thought that maybe Cal could pull the upset here, but Cal just couldn't get any traction. They got like 8 rushing yards on 25 carries.
No, and they still have a true freshman quarterback, though. You know, he showed the spark earlier in the season. He has struggled. He has, struggled with turnovers. He has been at best inconsistent these last few weeks. So to be expected, the ups and downs of starting a true freshman at quarterback, and hopefully they have the stomach to ride this train for the next year, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, because he's shown a lot. But the story here is, Virginia, to me, you look at Virginia, maybe BYU, maybe Georgia, maybe Minnesota, like they're excavators, right? They need to find those wins in the dirt. Dodgers just won the World Series.
I saw that. I was going to congratulate you. Anyway.
Holy moly. With a double play with Vladimir Guerrero on third, I am trying to maintain calm. I'm going to just take 1 second here, real quick, Ty, off mic. Woo! Okay.
There we go. All right.
The excavators, right? That the wins aren't always apparent. The wins aren't always apparent on the ground, but they're digging, they're brushing, and they find them. And it's a super impressive quality to have, especially if you're a program like Virginia that has been searching for quite some time.
So that is the state of affairs in the ACC. There were some other games. Pitt won big. By the way, Pitt still has a role to play in all of this. We will get to that, I'm sure, in due course here over the next few weeks. But if you are interested in chaos, as I know many people are, the ACC is sort of where it's at. The SEC should not be overlooked in this capacity either, because the SEC is, I think, like rounding second, getting to the point where we're almost in the stretch run here, where we're going to see a lot of things break throughout the month of November. So we had this Georgia-Florida game. Number 5, Georgia, unranked Florida. This was Florida's first game without Billy Napier, interim coach Billy Gonzalez. The question was, what kind of Gator squad are we going to see here?
True.
And this ended up being a great back and forth game. A great back and forth game. And you said it time and again, and I give you credit for it.
Hold on. Let me settle in for this. Okay.
The point was not that Florida was in any kind of tailspin. Obviously, the results weren't there. But I think the underlying point that you have been trying to emphasize with Florida is that this is still a very talented team that could be pretty good. It is still the same roster. They were just not translating all of that into wins, into consistency. And so in this one, they came to play. As we often see in big rivalries, they came to play. The offense showed some nice pop with chunk plays. It's frustrating because even when you have better Florida performances like this, it still feels like they are leaving some meat on the bone. DJ Lagway has such a high ceiling. I think we can see it. Still a couple throws out there where, man, it's just like if he makes a couple more of these, if he's a little bit more accurate, this game gets turned on its ear, maybe has a little bit of a different result. But
he's easily in the running for the least boring college football player of 2025. Like the fumbles, the interceptions, the runs, the incredible throws, the improv, like the tantalizing talent on display and the boneheaded errors are just constant and fun for me as somebody who doesn't care if Florida wins or loses, but I'm sure maddening for Florida fans. And I'm sure there's, something to that with a couple of recent Florida quarterbacks as well.
Florida had a shot in this one, a legit shot in this one. And they were up for, plenty of time in this game, but Georgia ends up winning 24-20. If you'll allow me a little bit of dog humor right now, Dan.
Please.
I jotted down here that Georgia is technically the Bulldogs, but they play more like Huskies. And what I mean by that is anyone who's had a Husky knows that Huskies are infamous for being escape artists. I talked to a guy, one of the guys who's helping me rehab my shoulder, which is still not right. He was telling me about his Husky this week that proceeded to jump over a 3-foot fence. Then they made it higher. It got out of a 6-foot fence. Then they sort of tried to put stuff in front of it so it couldn't jump over it, at which point the dog dug under it. They're just very good at being escape artists. Sweet dogs, but very good at getting out of confined spaces. And it really feels like that is Georgia. It really feels like that is Georgia's identity right now. They are a one-loss team. They escaped close losses and came away with wins against Tennessee, Ole Miss, and now this one against Florida. Again, to your point of winning being a skill, Georgia has that. It's not always pretty, but they have that, and they have a quarterback in Gunnar Stockton who just finds a way. They've got a receiver, a transfer receiver in Zachariah Branch, who is kind of growing into this and finding ways to come up big in key spots. They're not perfect. Nobody in the SEC is perfect. Nobody in college football is perfect, maybe outside of Ohio State or Indiana.
Right.
But they're finding ways to get the job done against good teams. And I don't really know how else to frame it other than to say that Georgia's going to be a tough out and they are playing like Huskies.
Yeah, I don't have a better. I mean, I said excavators. I apologize for stepping on your line of thinking. I think both are true. And in this one, look, Georgia wasn't always running well. Obviously, a huge run sealed this one. Eventually, 2 or 3 huge runs sealed it. There was a pretty big mental error late for Florida with that penalty, the jumping offsides. But the way Georgia plays, and Gunnar Stockton wasn't perfect, but he made some damn good throws. They made plays, and they're coached well enough and they execute well enough at the end of games, knowing that they're playing against other college students and that mistakes are going to happen. So if in the fourth quarter, they're just a little bit cleaner, right? If they're just a little bit more prepared to do boring quality things, you're going to win after Tennessee misses a field goal, right? That you're just still locked in. You're going to win when Florida has opportunities but can't put it together on offense. You're going to win a lot of those games if you are just the team shooting yourself in the foot less. Obviously, they have I think it was Noah Thomas, the ball tipped off of his hands for a pick that set up a field goal. And so, quality moment from Florida. But Florida also needed the huge pass to Trey Wilson. And then they needed the pass that looked like it may have been caught after the DJ Lagway scramble and heave downfield, that maybe arms were scooped under a ball, but you couldn't really tell, and it was reviewed and there was no, that's what Florida needed to win this game, whereas Georgia didn't need those kinds of plays. And that's the difference right now between these two teams. Georgia's not a perfect team. They're very beatable by a number of teams in this country, but they won't beat themselves in the way that 97% of teams will at the end of games. And it shows, with the Auburn game, now with this game, with the Ole Miss game. It's just, look, the Bama game didn't work out, but Bama's also happens to be of that caliber. And they're finding ways.
They're finding ways, and both of these teams, I often frame it, and maybe this isn't the right way to do it, but I often talk about teams that have a pretty big part to play as we get into the month of November. And both of these teams, by hook or by crook, are in that position. Georgia obviously is trying to play to get back into that SEC title game. Right now, they're not in it, but there's a chance that if some things in front of them break, they could very easily find themselves playing for another SEC crown. Again, it depends on what happens, sort of the remainder of their schedule, but some of the teams in front of them, they do have a spot against Texas, which I think will be pretty big in a couple of weeks. But that's the main one that I think could really be significant with respect to this SEC title chase. They are at home for that game in a couple of weeks, but that is one that I think is big to kind of circle on the calendar. And on the Florida side, look, Florida is on the road at Ole Miss. Florida is on the road at Kentucky. Kentucky not necessarily involved in the title chase, but very active, let's say, on the coaching carousel side. Will they, won't they, with Mark Stoops? Clearly, there's a game coming up here. It's a bit of a rivalry against Tennessee. That one's at home in the Swamp. Tennessee, I don't know if Tennessee is going to be ranked after this recent loss that we can talk about in a second against Oklahoma. but Tennessee is obviously a pretty good team one way or another, whether they're in the title chase or not. I'll be curious to see what it looks like when Tennessee visits the Swamp. And then, of course, there's a big one at the end of the year against Florida State, which, talk about being coaching carousel adjacent. Florida's fired its coach. Kentucky could fire its coach.
Yeah.
Who knows what's to come with Florida State and Mike Norvell. So
Agreed.
An interesting road for both of these schools as we get now into the home stretch here throughout the month of November. How much of the Tennessee-Oklahoma game?
Exactly where I was going to go. Just sort of speaking of teams not outside of the SEC championship race, but just sort of paying attention, peering in, like, the sickos photo, right?
Yeah.
That's where Oklahoma is right now. They're not sickos, but they're sicko adjacent. I watched this game. I had this side by side with the Dodger game all evening, and it was a fascinating watch. And the thing we talked about heading into this game was perhaps how underrated Tennessee was on the ground and how that was pacing things for this offense and helping out to play not complementary football, but to pick up the load where the defense has been struggling in the back end. Tennessee couldn't run the ball tonight.
No.
And ultimately that was the difference, that Oklahoma wasn't moving the ball and wasn't scoring points all that consistently on offense. They had a scoop and score. What was the injury, by the way, to that Oklahoma defensive player? Did he pull a hamstring when he was?
I did not see what the injury was.
Okay.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
I did not see exactly what the injury
Number
was.
32.
Yeah.
But there is something about Oklahoma. They got stronger over the course of the game. They got what they needed out of Xavier Robinson, who I think to this point has been sort of an unheralded running back for Oklahoma. Not a huge expectation on his shoulders. John Mateer made plays, was far from perfect against Tennessee tonight. But the Oklahoma defense, a defense that I think we both had our questions about in terms of offenses faced heading into this game, saying Tennessee on the road was going to be an especially challenging test. They didn't pass it against Ole Miss last week. And what were they going to do when faced against another quality offense? And it was take advantage of a couple of pretty horrendous Joey Aguilar throws and just stay locked in. And that I came away very impressed with Oklahoma, because this was an absolutely losable performance from the Sooners, and they got better after kind of looking lackluster for a good chunk of this.
Yeah, I mean, I also jotted down Tennessee couldn't run. And then on top of it, they had 3 turnovers, 2 picks, 1 interception. That number actually might be higher. I don't even know, because I jotted that down before the game was over. But, when you can't run, when you're putting it all on Joey Aguilar, who I think was fine, but Joey Aguilar was the scouting report on Aguilar before he even started his Tennessee career was sometimes he's a bit of a gunslinger. He has a tendency to force balls over the middle. He trusts his arm at times a little too much. Sometimes the footwork's not there. He's not a perfect specimen, but I think he's fine. He's obviously done a pretty good job this season. And I think we saw a little bit of that in this game. But all told, I come away impressed with, I think, a lot of what you had to say with Oklahoma, because I watched this game from start to finish. Oklahoma grew into this game in a way that was really meaningful. You and I were joking at one point that I think when Oklahoma had 16 points, they had exactly 0 offensive touchdowns, right? They had 3 field goals and a defensive scoop and score. Well, that changed, right? They grew into the game. They figured out a way to chart a path forward. The final score here says 33-27. I don't know if it was necessarily that close because of the way that this game broke down later on. Tennessee got some late points here, sure, but Oklahoma, in the manner in which they kind of put this one away on the road, I thought was really impressive, because we had questions about this offense. I think I even put in the previous description for the last podcast episode, can Oklahoma score 30 points? They hadn't done this, Dan. They hadn't scored 30 points. So the fact that they went on the road and
the offense
33,
did not, to be clear, did not.
I know, but
30, but yes, they were close.
But as a team in general, they hadn't done this. They hadn't scored more than 26.
Yeah.
So the fact that they go on the road against a team that I think we still believe is a pretty good defense, pretty good in general, a very hostile spot at night. They've got the whole blackout theme or dark mode theme, whatever they called it, going on in Neyland Stadium. That's a pretty heavy environment. So to go in there to put up 33 points and to beat a top 15 team in Tennessee, I thought was damn impressive.
Yeah. By the way, Tennessee is still a team that can score at any moment. Like,
Oh
was
my
it
God, yeah.
Braylon Staley who had the great touchdown run running around, like used the block really nicely. And just on the Oklahoma point, I think you're right about all these things. John Mateer is not going to go down in Oklahoma Sooner lore like Baker Mayfield or Sam Bradford or Kyler Murray or, what 1 year of Jalen Hurts obviously winning a Super Bowl now. But I think by the time it's all done for Mateer in Oklahoma, I think the reaction of Sooner fans will be like, wasn't the best, but that's my guy.
No.
Wasn't the best, but man, was he fun. And
Well, look, everybody wants a guy like that.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a guy like that who's a bit of a wild card,
Mhm.
who clearly can make something out of nothing. And those are the guys that tend to get the folk tales written about them. I think you called him a folk hero at some point. He may not be the same level of folk hero as Baker Mayfield, but he's fun as hell, man.
Yeah.
He's fun to watch, and he had a good game. It didn't start out that way. It took him a while to get going, but eventually he got going on the ground, had some big plays, definitely padded his stats a little bit through the air as well. So, just a tough guy that you can never really count out.
Yeah, and Tennessee had shots. Tennessee
They did
have shots. They just didn't give themselves a consistent opportunity. Where are we going next?
I want to talk about the Big 12 next.
Let's.
I want to talk about Texas Tech 43, Kansas State 20.
Okay.
There were aspects of this game that reminded me very much of Texas Tech in the way that they beat Utah earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Just the game, just the overall tenor of the game.
Like an inevitability of Texas Tech that they can do a number of things on both sides of the ball where you have to be your perfect self on every play.
I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
I'm talking about this one being really close at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
12-7.
Yep. Correct.
In favor of the Red Raiders. And then just like that, they explode for 31 points in the second half. They end up winning this one going away. That reminded me a lot of that Utah win. Kind of felt the same. I came away uber impressed by the ground game again. Maybe the numbers weren't as high as they've been in the past, but I thought we saw some key runs from Jacoby Williams, Cameron Dickey. I think those guys are really good. And especially as we came into this season wondering, what are they going to do after they lose Taj Brooks? These guys have, I think, done an excellent job stepping in, not being the same player, but maybe in the aggregate replacing him to some extent.
Right.
I came away even more impressed by the Texas Tech defensive front. And it's not necessarily going to show up in the box score with a million sacks or pressures or whatever, but they had Avery Johnson running for his life nearly the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
So this all sets up what I think is going to be an absolute monster matchup next week, suddenly, between Texas Tech and BYU.
I think game day is going.
Game day should go.
I believe they're going. It's in Lubbock, correct?
It's in Lubbock.
Yeah, I believe that was announced that game day's going.
We preview some games on Tuesday. We're absolutely going to have to preview this game. I mean, there's a pretty good chance.
You're an early headliner, yeah.
Yeah, this is more than likely going to be. I don't know where the rankings will put Texas Tech after this win, and there were some teams in front of them that lost, and BYU is going to benefit from that as well. But there's a pretty good chance this is going to be a top 10 matchup between these two teams, and I'm damn excited about that.
Yeah.
So the Texas Tech win going away by 23 points. I can't say enough good things about how they focused and how they pulled away in the second half.
Look, you force turnovers, you turn some of them into points, you're able to run the ball, you're able to, as you mentioned, the defensive front has been swarming basically all season long. David Bailey has been a problem consistently.
Yep.
It'll be very difficult to lose. That's a very difficult formula. Obviously, quarterback injury is a very clear way where they have had some dips for a quarter or a half or a game, or however you want to look at it, with now Will Hammond out for the season and Baron Morton back. It still, to me, is weird, as somebody who has watched this sport for a long time, that Texas Tech plays so against reputational type. They're like, oh, no, defense and running, Texas Tech, as we've all come to understand this program to be defined by running the ball, defense, patience, knowing that, they're only up 12-7 at halftime. Just stick with it. Go on the road. Just stick with it. A sloppy game against Utah. Finish strong with the backup court. Like, it's been very fun and a little bit surprising to me to see the extent to which they have so far fulfilled the promise and the hype of investing so much into this program in the offseason. And they look every bit like a program that belongs in whatever conversation you want to have, I would say, about the second tier of this sport nationally. Right?
Yeah, and look, they're part of a broader conversation that needs to be had at some point. Probably not now. We got to give it a few weeks. We got to wait for the season to unfold here.
Yeah.
But we do need to talk about teams that went all in on the transfer portal to try and give themselves a boost, and which ones succeeded versus which didn't. You know, Texas Tech is very much on the right side of that spectrum. A team like an Auburn, I don't know. Okay.
Sure.
Probably on the opposite end. Oklahoma maybe somewhere in the middle or closer to the good side.
Done a good job. I mean, look, it's all relative with Oklahoma with where they've been. Yeah.
So Texas Tech is very much a success story with how they went out, with how they spent their money. And I think it's paying dividends. Again, they've got a huge game coming up next weekend. Let me just say this about K-State, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
I haven't watched a ton of K-State this year in real time. I've obviously gone back. I've rewatched pretty much all of their games. I don't think the replays effectively capture the vibe the same way as watching the game in the moment. We've been talking about tortured fan bases a lot lately. Let me nominate K-State for a second.
The floor is yours.
K-State got this one to 19-14 early in the third quarter. They were trailing, but it felt like they had a shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
From that point forward, Dan, I was frustrated. I had no dog in this fight. I was frustrated because they had so many chances here and they just could not get out of their own way. They did end up with a touchdown at some point to make it a 2-score game. But whether it was offense, whether it was defense, they had so many opportunities to just bolt the drive together. It did not need to be pretty. Just find a way. Mm-hmm. Find a way to get in position. There's a penalty. Find a way to get in position. Oh, there's a pass thrown behind somebody. Find a way to get in position to put yourself in a position to maybe win this game or at least apply some pressure to the Texas Tech defense. They just couldn't do it. There is so much of an execution problem right now with Kansas State. It has to be maddening if you root for the Wildcats. It just has to. It doesn't feel like Avery Johnson has that much support. It's clear that he is an athlete out there. He is trying his best to make plays, but there's just not enough around him. And that's damn frustrating to watch.
No, and they really, look, they generate some big plays, but they don't really do anything crazy well other than show potential, but then consistently fall short of it. And they've been in a better place. Look, there's no shame in losing to Texas Tech, this year's iteration of Texas Tech.
No.
You'd like to not turn the ball over 5 times. You'd like to not pop a huge run early with Avery Johnson for a touchdown and then really not show that kind of big play ability consistently for the rest of the game. Like, there's just stuff like that for Kansas State where they're just going to struggle all year, win and loss, win or lose. Yes, with consistency.
We also had, speaking of sloppiness,
yes.
Houston had some fumbleitis, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Houston got up to number 22. Houston's having a really good year.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what happens from here on out. Houston and Willie Fritz have already exceeded expectations. They're having a good year. They end up losing 45-35 to West Virginia. They fumbled 5 times. They only lost 2 of them, but they fumbled 5 times.
Right.
Connor Wegman had 3 of them. Connor Wegman also threw 2 picks, one of which went back for a touchdown. And it was that pick 6 that essentially was the dagger. It put West Virginia up 10. West Virginia never looked back. There was a little bit of a back and forth nature to this game, but ultimately that pick 6 was the one that gave the Mountaineers enough separation to bring this one home. So I'm not here to chastise Houston. I'm only here to state the obvious, that there was a lot of oddity to this game, to say the absolute minimum, in that Houston could not hold on to the damn football. And a nice win for West Virginia. Scotty Fox, a nice game.
Yes. So not their starting quarterback, obviously. And perhaps, look, I'm not in the Houston locker room, but when you play that inefficiently and that loosely, unfortunately, like, they beat the defending champ of their conference last week on the road. And so is there a letdown factor? And they go down 21-7 to West Virginia, who's been at times truly awful this year.
Yeah.
But there's, you got to extend a little bit of grace given how much new there is in Morgantown. Obviously, new old coach, and then the number of transfers brought in, that it was going to be very much a work in progress this year. So good for West Virginia for sticking with it and keeping the locker room together. Rich Rodriguez has done a decent enough job.
Yeah.
Likely, at least this week he did, in getting this team ready to play against a tough Houston team who was just mentally, it seemed, not there.
Yeah. I mean, they're not a finished product, but they are certainly exceeding expectations. Speaking of which.
Yeah, this is still only year 2 of Willie Fritz?
Year 2, yeah.
Okay, extend grace in both directions.
So, like elsewhere in the Big 12, Baylor won big. You mentioned Baylor at the top. Kansas won by 17 over Oklahoma State. Arizona absolutely throttled Colorado 53-7.
That's a conversation. Yep.
But Arizona State 24. Iowa State 19. Jeff Sims ran for 228 yards.
Get him how you need him. Get him however you can.
Yards. I saw Jeff Sims was playing this game. I'm like, I'm not picking Arizona State. Are you kidding me?
Right. Same.
228 yards. What was this?
Well, Ty, I'm glad you asked, because one of the most effective ways to keep Jeff Sims from throwing the ball 30 times is to have him run the ball 30 times. It's a real galaxy brain way of thinking about it, and Kenny Dillingham nailed this. It was a weird game. Obviously, Iowa State's defense has been pretty disappointing all season long. They didn't give up a ton of points, but you watching this team, you're like, I don't think they're going to be able to do much consistently through the air. Like these last few weeks, especially, and they come out to the lead against BYU, and the defense is unable to sustain. Obviously, the injuries on the back end of that defense have affected things greatly, but they gave the ball back and forth to each other so much in this game. I'm just going to play it right now. Ty, you ready?
Sure. What are you playing?
Punt, miss field goal, punt, field goal, touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, fumble, touchdown, interception, miss field goal, punt, touchdown, punt, field goal, punt, downs, interception, fumble, punt, downs, end of game.
We finally get a dramatic drive chart reading. It took us till week 10.
I don't want to just hand it out willy-nilly, Ty.
I appreciate that. Yeah, this game was weird, man.
I need some water.
Well, while you're getting water, let's shift gears then and talk about what went down in the Big Ten. So the biggest games in the Big Ten were at night. We had USC winning 21-17 over Nebraska. We had a weird Michigan game. Michigan winning 21-16 over Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, we had an overtime win for Minnesota over Michigan State, 23-20. And then earlier in the day, we had an absolute murder.
Guess who just got murdered?
Indiana 55-10 over Maryland. And we had Ohio State, Penn State, Dan.
Yes, we did.
38-14. The Buckeyes win at home. Why don't we start with the USC Nebraska game? Okay. So not a great day through the air for Jaden Mayava.
For anybody. Yeah.
For anybody. I talked about how I didn't think Nebraska had the secondary to take, away one of USC's primary weapons out wide.
I've really liked Nebraska's corners. This is you saying this.
This is me. Yeah.
Evaluation going in.
And listen, I like their corners in the secondary as well.
Hold on.
But
so do you or do you not?
Well, if you allow me to finish, I can tell you my thoughts are here.
Okay.
In the preview, my commentary on Nebraska's secondary was I like them. I don't think they can be as effective in taking away one of the two primary weapons as Notre Dame was.
Okay.
Because I don't think they're as talented in the defensive backfield. As it were, they took away both of them.
Yes, they did.
They took away both of them. It was a great effort by the Nebraska secondary. And guess what USC did? Lo and behold, it took until now for them to do this. They committed to the run.
They did. Well, I think they did against Michigan when it was working. They decided to keep going to King Miller. Yeah.
I just feel like there have been only a few instances where Lincoln Riley has been comfortable with this.
Yeah.
Because we've seen instances over the last 2 seasons now where the running game actually has been quite effective, and they just don't do it enough. This is not one of those times. This is a really good game for King Miller. Actually, a really good game for Jade Maava on the ground as well. They turned to that because it was working. They stuck with it, and they came away with a hard-fought win. This is a tough place. And speaking of like blackouts or dark mode, whatever they were calling it everywhere across the country tonight, Nebraska had that going on. This is a very big deal. Everybody was jacked up for this one. Matt Rule had newly signed the extension.
They released the black balloons this week.
The black balloons.
It was the weird, not the weird, but the blackout situation. Yeah.
So everybody was all fired up in Lincoln for Matt Rule to, I guess, lose another one against an AP top 25 team. He's now 0-8 as Nebraska coach. But for me, the takeaway was that USC's willingness to commit to the run in a spot where it was clearly working and clearly could make them some hay. That to me was a breath of fresh air that they did not try to force the pass when that was clearly not as effective.
Okay, so you are complimenting USC, which I think is not as deserved as your tone would suggest.
Okay.
USC was running for 7-8 yards a carry. As you mentioned, struggled through the air to hit on bigger plays. They were taking shots. They just weren't hitting.
They weren't.
The receivers were smothered. They were in double coverage. And to be fair, like even still, Mekhi Lemon makes these plays sometimes in double coverage in impossible situations. This game was 14-all in the second half, I believe. 17-14 in the second half. Now, this is, you didn't mention the one thing. I'm sure you were going to get there if I didn't cut you off. Dylan Raiola left this game.
Yes.
Injured.
Yep.
And I don't, was it TJ? I apologize for the pronunciation. I had the
TJ Latif. He is a freshman
okay.
who came in and actually did okay, I think, in his own right, given the circumstances.
He ran.
I thought at least had a decent enough command and was in a spot where he kept Nebraska competitive. You never know what you're going to get in a situation like that. You bring a freshman in off the bench, big situation like this, at home, at night, good USC team. He didn't play him out of the game, which is really all you can ask for.
He threw for 7 yards.
He threw for 7 yards.
1 yard. Sorry, I would say 1 yards. 1 yard per attempt. Every time he threw the ball, on average, it was going about yay far. If you're watching, about 3 feet. If my math serves. USC was not running away from this game. They weren't running away from Nebraska when Nebraska had a quarterback who was zero passing threat in this game. He was zero threat. It became very clear pretty quickly. He was zero threat to USC's defense through the air. And USC had to play a full 60 minutes to win this game. So it became nearly impossible at the end of the game. I think they pinned Nebraska inside the 5 or something with a punt. It became nearly impossible for Nebraska to win this game, to drive 95 yards with a backup quarterback. That became clear. But even still, this should have been a game with USC running the ball like they were able to. At times they were, 8, 9, 10, 12 yards per carry without being touched for those first 8, 9, 10 yards. And they couldn't figure out a way to finish drives. And so when you're clunkers, winning is better than losing. There was freezing temps in Lincoln. There's a good win for a USC team who does not win this game under Lincoln Riley, right? This is a losable spot for USC consistently under Lincoln Riley. Good for them for winning. But if Dylan Raiola were in, if any sort of replacement level quarterback were in, and maybe TJ Latif turns into that guy with experience, like Jade Maava dirted the ball to stop the clock with 3 minutes left, up 4, punting it back to Nebraska, who only had 1 timeout, I believe, at the time. Like, just doing them weird favors like that. And so, I don't know. The way you talk, the way your tone, I think, was too nice to USC.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
They did not run away from Nebraska on the ground at all. Like, they ran well, but they didn't turn it into points.
I thought I'm taking stock in the fact that they did not try to make fetch happen through the air.
Okay.
Like, there was at least enough recognition from a play calling standpoint that the running game was working, maybe we should just stick with that, regardless of whether or not it translated into points and a runaway win or anything like that.
Right.
I just feel like I have seen too many instances, and this was especially the case last year with Woody Marks, where they could have ran more. They could have focused on that more, and it seemed like they wanted to throw it. And that was a point of frustration for us as we talked about USC, and I think among other USC fans that wrote into us as well.
Right.
They didn't do that this game. And it was still at night, loud environment, excitable environment where the crowd was obviously pretty jazzed up. A bummer that Dylan Raiola goes down. Now, it looked really painful.
It's an ankle situation, I believe, right?
Yeah, he got his ankle sort of like twisted and then rolled up on as he was going down on a play by a lineman. He was hurt. He did not return. He didn't play most of, obviously the fourth quarter, most of the second half. We're going to have to wait to see what his status is moving forward. Nebraska now is in a position where they've got 3 losses. They're 6-3 overall. They've got road games against UCLA and Penn State, and then the home game, the Heroes game, to close out the season against Iowa. So I think those are probably 3 winnable games.
With a healthy Dylan Raiola.
They need a healthy Dylan Raiola.
Right, exactly.
So we're going to have to watch the injury reports pretty closely to see where things come down as the week progresses here. But, 6-3, you win out. Even if you finish 8-4, it's still better, I think, than a year ago. And maybe it helps justify the big contract extension he gave Matt Rule.
Yeah. Look, they should win. They should beat Penn State and UCLA in this scenario if Raiola was able to bounce back. I mean, those are 2 road games. That's tough. It's 2 longer trips. But, Nebraska with a healthy Dylan Raiola, I think there's a good chance they're winning this game. Defensive deficiencies up front and all.
Let me play my Super Saiyan sound.
Please.
Julian Sayin, baby. Woo, baby. Good.
There are other excellent players in the Heisman conversation in this moment. He might be alone right now. I mean, who else? I mean, there are other great players in this sport. Running backs, receivers, quarterbacks, whatever. Take your pick. He's been a machine this year.
He was a machine in this game.
Yeah.
And, maybe the Penn State defense this year isn't quite as good as last. And, I mean, it's just not the same. They're not as good. But still, in theory, it should be one of the better defenses in the Big Ten. There's clearly talent there. He went 20 of 23 for 316 and 4 touchdowns. It did not feel like he missed at all in this game. And it wasn't like he was dinking and dunking. He was taking deep shots. He was putting the ball exactly where it needed to be for Carnell Tate, for Jeremiah Smith, for those guys to go out there and eat pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just a clinic from Julian Sayin. And if this is the version of the Ohio State offense that we're going to see, like I saw in the run-up to this game, people talking about, the Ohio State offense isn't actually that good. They're not really turning Julian Sayin loose. We don't know what they've got. We were not saying that. But I saw that out there. And I did sort of side-eye it, but okay, I wanted to see what would happen here. 38-14 was your final. I think the cake topper was an 11-yard touchdown catch by Jeremiah Smith. I don't know if you saw this one. It's kind of the catch of the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's tipped at the line by Zakee Wheatley from Penn State, then one-handed by Jeremiah Smith, who just casually brings it in and goes in for a touchdown. So, I don't know what else you could say. This was a really solid performance for the Ohio State offense. They started running the ball a little bit better with Bo Jackson, right? I mean, they're just starting to round into form, which I think makes them all the more scary. And defensively played pretty well again, which has been more of the story of the season. So, there's not much criticism in the way of Ohio State. The Penn State side of things, I'm not sure Ethan Grunkemeyer looks much worse than Drew Aller at this point, honestly. I mean, they weren't getting much out of Aller before this game, maybe more veteran experience. But Ethan Grunkemeyer, for his part, was okay.
Okay.
I do think the mystique of Andy Kotelnicki and the whole gadget play thing that he likes to do, I think that mystique is worn off at Penn State. And my hunch is that Andy Kotelnicki won't be there next year, regardless of who the coach is. just because like it just feels like he goes to that a little bit too much, and it is definitely annoying to watch as a Penn Stater. But this is kind of what we expected. I thought maybe they would keep it within the number just because of the defense, but Ohio State was too much. They just had no answer. At times, they're trying to bracket Jeremiah Smith, right? They're double covering him to the outside, to the inside, and he's still running past everybody. I don't know what you're supposed to do to stop
Or
this guy.
Julian Sayin's like, all right, I'm just going to throw it to Carnell Tate.
Or he's going to throw it to, or Brandon Innes, right? Like
Right.
they have so many weapons out wide that it's an embarrassment of riches. And I don't know how you cover all those guys. Even if you got the best secondary in the country, they will find the weak spot because you got a quarterback with pinpoint accuracy and you got 3 receivers plus a tight end that you feel you can trust in a big spot.
Okay, the only thing I will say, Ty, so I'm just going to say it. Ohio State's schedule is not necessarily where Ohio State schedules typically are these past few years in terms of defenses faced, or like when they're playing Penn State, there is the assumption that there is some degree of complementary football from Penn State, that Penn State has a healthy starting quarterback and is able to move the ball some, that Penn State has NFL players on offense playing to the best of their ability. And when you look at their schedule this season, Illinois, Washington, Minnesota, this year's version of Penn State, they just haven't seen that defense that, you know, in previous years they'd see with a top 10 Wisconsin defense or Iowa defense or, you know, last season's Oregon defense or a national championship caliber Michigan defense. And it's just, it is not a statement to say that Ohio State is not the number 1 team in the country and has not earned their ranking and does not look incredible. But we haven't seen them pushed by somebody of comparable talent level. Is that fair? I mean, there are guys on this Penn State defense for sure.
Probably.
But what is asked of the Penn State defense right now is a lot to ask when you don't have that complementary piece. Like, they couldn't really run the ball. They put together a couple of nice drives in the first half.
Sure.
But there was really no threat of Penn State getting to 30 points in this game.
No, I mean, I think the only counter would be they played Texas first
Right,
week
they
of the
played
year.
Texas. Right. No, you're absolutely right. Since Texas.
Yeah, but that was a week 1 game, and every team is a little bit different now than they were in week 1. I think we know that,
but yeah.
But I hear what you're saying, and you know, as I'm watching these Ohio State games, the 2 thoughts that come to mind now are: what's it going to look like against Michigan? Are they going to try to be something other than what they've been?
Hopefully, it's not a Michigan that struggled with Purdue tonight, but yeah,
right, 21-16, a win over Purdue. What version of this Ohio State team are we going to see against Michigan? Because last year, Ohio State didn't round into their eventual form until after they lost. That sort of shook something loose, and suddenly they started playing like, you know, pedal to the metal. They ripped through the playoff and won the national championship. So maybe what we're seeing now is like an earlier recognition of what they are. They're growing into who they are eventually going to be. And by the time they play Michigan, they won't have some of the problems that they've had the last couple of years. I don't know. But that's the first thought. And then the second thought, and more to your point, is, man, what is that Big Ten title going to look like if it's Ohio State against Indiana?
It seems like it will be Ohio State against Indiana. It seems
like it will be, and it seems like it's likely going to be 1 versus 2. What is that game going to look like?
I mean, at the moment, my initial thought with that, and we saw, you know, some SEC games and games all over the country to get to. At the moment, it seems like my first concern would be Fernando Mendoza throwing into this defense.
Or
he's a little bit error. Anybody throwing into this defense. Yeah. Arch Manning throwing into this defense to start the season should have been an indicator that, like, maybe he's not great. Maybe he's improving. And maybe this defense is not going to miss a beat from where they were last season.
I think all this stuff is fair.
Yeah.
Absolutely fair, Dan, to say the absolute very least. A big win, though, however you want to frame it, for the Ohio State Buckeyes here. Let's talk through just a few other things around college football.
Well, there's some SEC stuff we haven't talked. We didn't talk Vandy, Texas, right?
I wanted to bring up Vandy and Texas.
We got Ole Miss with a nice win. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up Vandy and Texas.
Kentucky. You know how many touchdowns Kentucky scored to beat Auburn? 1. They scored 1, a single solitary touchdown, and that was plenty.
So the Texas Vandy game was actually higher up on my list, but I scrolled past it because we were talking about Georgia and Florida and all these others. But 34-31. So this game was kind of crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I turned it off. Texas was up 34-10. I'm thinking, all right, I got this one in the bag. I had Texas. You had Texas. I'm thinking this one's over. That's when Vandy goes on a furious fourth quarter rally. They end up scoring 21 unanswered points. They end up making it 34-31 in the dying embers of the game, and they almost recover an onside kick. They probably should have recovered the onside kick.
Dude, it was inches.
It was inches away.
It was a
from
great kick. The execution was great. The coverage was great. The positioning of the guys seemed great, that they were, surrounding and swarming the ball, and it just dribbled out of bounds.
I thought Texas looked awesome.
Yeah.
Up until the point where Vandy went into beast mode and or Texas stopped playing defense. Okay.
Well, there's some coverage busts that made scoring quickly
Yes.
a lot easier. Yeah.
Yes. But up until that point, I thought Texas looked great. They looked like a machine. Arch did play.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he was in concussion protocol in the build up to this one. I thought he looked really good. I don't know if like the shot to the head shook something loose, and maybe
He joked about that. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
He was like, maybe the concussion helped. Yeah.
Maybe it did.
Yeah.
Maybe it allowed him to kind of take a step back and not focus so much on being a Manning or being what other people claim he should be. He seemed like he was playing looser with more freedom, had better command, was more accurate with the football for the vast majority of this game. I thought he looked really, really good. So I commend him. I obviously commend Texas for getting this win, and I commend Vandy for coming back in the manner that they did. This game felt like it was a foregone conclusion, and you just can never say that to Diego Pavia or Clark Lee or the way that this Vanderbilt team is constructed, because they truly never say die.
I would also commend Sark. The way that he called this game, it seemed like he finally understood some of the offensive line issues that he has in front of him, getting the ball out of Arch hands quickly. Was it the opening play? One of the first plays, the sort of motion swing pass to Ryan Wingo, who we talked about specifically on the preview show as being a bright spot for this offense that's been somewhat disappointing this season. Arch wasn't always hitting guys on the second level, though he did do more of that confidently. I thought the big deal with Arch was, one, they were running the ball a little bit better, which opened things up, seemingly. And two, he was making boring throws without panic, it seemed. But no, he wasn't throwing the ball downfield like crazy. He did take some shots, but he was on target more than he's seemingly been, with hitches, with screens, with shorter stuff underneath to whoever. And it makes a difference when the offense is in much more of a rhythm. When he's in a rhythm, you can see the results. They jump out to the lead they jumped out to. They had the coverage bust late, and credit Vandy for being the all gas no breaks at near the end of that game. But no, Vandy struggled to run the ball against the teeth of this Texas defense. They were swarming. They were all over Diego Pavia, and what can you say at this point about guys like Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons, right? They are the stars that we all know them to be, and they showed out in a huge game like this. Texas, I think, technically was favored, so I don't know if this makes it an upset, but they were the lower ranked team, and I still think Vandy's really, really good. But when the Texas defense is operating and Arch isn't missing, and they're getting a little bit out of Trey Wisner in this run game, it's really difficult to win an Austin.
And
yeah,
I believe 0 sacks allowed.
Is that true? I mean, it makes sense because they were having him getting rid of the ball quicker, but they could have been doing that earlier, and he just wasn't seeing what he needed to see as quickly as he needed to.
Yeah.
Good for Texas.
Absolutely. Elsewhere in the SEC, I mean, just to put a bow, I know we talked about a few of the other big games in the SEC, but the coaching carousel this time of year animates the vast majority of college football fans. It's sort of the game within the game. And especially this year, everybody's into it. By the way, if you've made it this far, we have built a coaching carousel game that we are going to make available on Monday. I will send it out via our email.
It's so good.
I will send it out across social media. I will talk about it throughout the course of our episodes over the next week or so.
Tell them what the winner gets. Tell them what the winner gets.
I don't know what the winner gets yet.
You get to be the head coach at Penn State.
Yeah, you get to be the head coach at Penn State, right? We don't know what the winner is going to get yet. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a week to kind of get your affairs in order here and play this game where you pick which jobs you think are going to come open, which coaches you think are going to be on the move. If you get the marriage correct, you're going to get bonus points.
Wow.
I got a whole thing going. It's complicated, but it's not that complicated, and it's going to be fun because there's nothing else like it. So stay tuned if you are interested in playing said game, because that is going to be coming out this week. The reason it's not opening until Monday is because I'm waiting to see what happens with Hugh Freeze. And I think there is a chance, I don't know anything. We're recording this late on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. I think there's a chance that Hugh Freeze is going to be the next shoe to drop.
Okay.
Hugh Freeze at home scored 3 points against Kentucky. Kentucky is arguably the worst team in the SEC right now. Kentucky has not played offense at all this year, with the exception of a few rare spots. I think they have definitely underwhelmed to a great extent. You could make a case that Mark Stoops is going to be one of the next ones to open up at some point down the road. I don't think it's
some money. Both of these guys some money. Yep,
they do. So all that being said, what we saw here at home at night, Auburn scoring 3 points after all the fanfare and the transfers and everything. This to me feels like probably the final act for Hugh Freeze, does it not?
Oh yeah. I mean, I could see like a cable news future for him, but
right. I'm not saying he's going to leave this earth like he is leaving on the ship with the elves in Lord of the Ring. I am saying he's just probably not going to be coaching Auburn much longer.
Right. I don't believe so either. I mean, they made the quarterback change to Ashton Daniels. Didn't exactly work out swimmingly. Win is better than a loss for Kentucky. And I think his record in the SEC at Jordan-Hare, you can fact check me on this. I apologize if I got it wrong. 2-9 in the SEC at home. This is a tough place to play. You've seen huge games. I've seen huge games on TV at Jordan-Hare. But this stadium should be enough to win, to get to 500 for a replacement level coach, to go 2-9 at home in that stadium with some of the NFL talent that this program has recruited and developed. It's just inexcusable.
Right. I talked about the conversation earlier about transfer portal success, which teams hit, which teams didn't.
Yep.
Auburn really went in the offseason. I mean, this was going to be the whole catalyst for this year's project.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands right now, they're a 5-loss team. They're 4-5. Their 3 remaining games are on the road at Vandy next week. They've got a home game against Mercer. That should be a win. They close out the year with the Iron Bowl against Alabama. Again, there are going to be a bunch of teams that are part of this conversation as we do the postmortem at some point down the road.
Yeah.
But Auburn missing a bowl with all of the hype that they had coming into this season is just a huge...
Agree.
That is not cool, man. And I can't imagine that Auburn faithful are going to be real excited about where things end up coming down this season. I got to believe this is it for Hugh Freeze. I just got to believe it.
I mean, the good news for Ohio State fans, though, is you're getting Cam Coleman. So there's that.
I guess, man. I don't know.
Yeah, this is rip it down to the studs.
What else did you see in the SEC?
I thought it was a nice win for Ole Miss. Little back and forth early on. It was Kejuan Lacey once again for Ole Miss pacing this one. It wasn't a huge Trinidad Chambliss game, but it's just South Carolina's struggles on offense are dooming them week in and week out. I thought they performed better than they could have given the nature of the letdown after the way that they lost that Bama game. But Ole Miss sitting kind of pretty in the SEC right now, are they not?
Oh, yeah. Ole Miss is a playoff team, man. They're a playoff team. They're going to make the playoff.
The rest of their schedule is the Citadel, which of note, I believe SP Plus has the Citadel scoring negative points in that game.
That's right.
It's something like 56.5 to negative 0.8 is the projected score. However, our dear friend Bill Connolly came up with that. And then they get Florida at home and the Egg Bowl's on the road. I don't discount anything. Now that Mississippi State is in the win column in the SEC. And Mississippi State, I think, could maybe sort of I think they have to beat Mizzou, but it's likely not a Bo Prabula Mizzou to get to a bowl game. But Ole Miss is sitting pretty.
100%.
Yep.
I have 2 other games, and then I want to play your reverbs.
Okay.
And then I want to bring this bad boy home.
Okay.
I want to talk about North Texas 31, Navy 17, Dan.
Yeah.
North Tech, we previewed this game. We were excited about this game.
Mm-hmm.
North Texas went up 14-0 on Navy. They didn't look back. We had another solid game out of Drew Mestamaker, but we had a monster game from Caleb Hawkins, who had 33 carries, 197 yards, and all 4 touchdowns that the Mean Green scored in this game.
Yes.
They sort of out-Navied Navy, which I thought was notable. Navy still got theirs. They ran for over 300 yards, but they had 2 picks. They had 2 picks. They had a fumble by Blake Horvath. All that stuff kind of works against you. What did I say? Horvath, excuse me. It's late.
No, that's fine. The Horvath are a species on a foreign planet that you got to creep carefully around the Horvath. They'll get you. They got stingers everywhere. Continue.
They do. They do. The fact is, though, this is not a Navy offense that's built around coming from behind. So when they're in a 2-score hole, it's going to be a problem to come back. And like on the North Texas side, the reason we keep talking about North Texas and the
By the way,
Green,
do you see how I've grown up? That I didn't say a single thing when you said coming from behind in the 2-hole. Like, did you notice the maturity on the other end of the line? Continue, Ty.
North Texas needs a little bit of help, but they're 8-1 overall. They're 5-1 in conference.
Yep.
They're one of 6 teams in the conference that has just 1 loss. And it is a very manageable slate the rest of the way. UAB, Rice, and Temple.
Hey,
so
man.
I don't
sleep on UAB.
I guess not. I don't know where things come down for the Mean Green. But to just be in the hunt for 11-1 at this point.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Great season.
Great season.
What else was the thing you noted? You said 2 other results, and then I've got a couple. Then let's do reverbs and dudes.
Notre Dame won 25-10 over Boston College. A couple weeks ago, you might recall, they beat USC. I jumped the gun. I called that a clunker. This was actually the clunker.
UGLY. You don't need no alibi. Yeah.
This was the clunker with dumb penalties on defense. The offense was 3 of 10 on third downs. They stalled out a fair amount. At times, it felt like Grayson James, who ended up playing quarterback for Boston College, was kind of unstoppable. So this was not exactly a banner performance by Notre Dame on the road, but they did win. They did win. And I thought, if I zoom out here and kind of put my emotions to the side, a really good game from CJ Carr, 299. More importantly, they're stretching the field with him. They're stretching the field. They had passes of 46, 44, 40, and 30, as well as later on a 94-yard touchdown run on the ground from Jeremiah Love. So Notre Dame having some explosivity in this offense is definitely a welcome addition compared to what we saw a year ago.
Fair enough. Arkansas was up 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, 17 unanswered from Mississippi State, and a great comeback. They score with, I think, under a minute left.
Yeah.
A Blake Shapen pass about 20 yards out. Get on the winning side of things in the SEC. Fresno State laid the lumber on Boise State, who loses Maddox Madsen early, can't throw the ball at all, still win by 3+ touchdowns. Good for Fresno. It's been a bit of a lumpy year in year 1 under Matt Entz. There was some like Army beat Air Force, for the Commander-in-Chief trophy, scoreboard, I guess. It still seems like Navy is in a good spot for that, but I guess you never know. My dear Buffalo Bulls go to 4-1 in the MAC. They destroy Bowling Green on the road. New Mexico fighting Jason X in a back and forth with the UNLV. Get the win on the road.
How about UTSA knocking off Tulane, man?
Buddy, and there was bad blood in that game. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
But it was Jeff Traylor talking about accusations from John Sumrall about piping and noise in the Alamo Dome. And then Jake Retzlaff gave an interview before the game where he said he doesn't lose here because he won in the bowl game last year. And then Owen McCown in UTSA.
He missed 2 passes. He went like 31 of 33.
Yeah.
For 370 and 4 touchdowns.
It's been a weird year for UTSA. That was Thursday night, Friday night. That was during the week. That was great. Florida State laid the lumber on Wake. raising my hand up. Totally wrong about that one.
Same.
So,
Yep. Same here.
Florida State finally wins a conference game, speaking of. And I think that's all I have. Oregon State held on to beat Wazoo in a kind of a clunker of a game, 10-7. That's the first part of their home and home. San Diego State, we talked about which team in the G6 side of things has a good chance. San Diego State has not lost in the Mountain West. They're quietly creeping. Their defense has been lights out, and that's Sean Lewis, offensive guy.
Yep.
They've been very, very good this year.
And, another team creeping.
Tell me.
James Madison.
Oh, man. They're not creeping. They're beating everybody by 3 touchdowns, but yeah.
They won 52-20 over Texas State. Alonzo Barnett, who is now reinstalled as the quarterback, 264 and 4 touchdowns through the air, had close to 100 on the ground and another touchdown. They steamrolled Texas State. This was a really nice win for the Dukes.
I like that you said reinstalled as if he was an exiled former leader.
Well, he was hurt,
And the guerrilla troops put him back in power. Yeah. Okay.
He was hurt. Start of the year, there was some, disparity between him and
Sluka.
Yeah, not disparity, but some questions as to who Bobby Ches would go with. So
true. All right.
We got a bunch of phone calls. Here are your Week 10 reverbs that dialed into 855-VERBAL-3. Have a listen.
Yes.
Dan, Ty, it is 8:29 on the East Coast, and the fattest raccoon I have ever seen just crossed the street in front of my house.
Nice.
I think it's coming for whatever I'm cooking. Have a good one.
Hey, Dan and Ty, it's Tommy from College Park.
Hey guys, this is Drew in Syracuse.
This is Keith from Louisville.
Hi, this is Eric from Camarillo, California. I'm a big fan of the Marshall Thundering Herd and Virginia Tech Hokies. And for purely player safety reasons, I think it's time for us to eliminate the second half and only play first half. Thank you.
Is Scotty Fox Jr. the guy in Morgantown? We'll see. But for today, Q Country Roads, baby.
So Penn State's the first team within the top 2 preseason to lose 5 straight. I'm just going to get ahead of next week and just say Penn State is the first team in the top 2 preseason to lose 6 straight.
I think that Dabo is the Nick Saban of Mike Gundy's.
Winning is a skill, and I'm so thankful it's one Jonathan Smith hasn't figured out in the Big Ten this year.
Looks like Mario Cristo butt strikes again.
Some teams win their clunkers. Some teams are coached by Mario Cristobal.
Hey, this is Katie calling from Fayetteville, Arkansas. Do interim coaches need a buyout? Because our offense is bad.
What a joy it is to be a Maryland football fan.
Is it un-American to want JMU to be in the college football playoff? Go Dukes!
Arizona Wildcats took your guys' scalpel Saturday to heart. They are slicing and dicing out the Buffs.
All right, let's see how many passing yards it takes to beat Boise State at home in 2025. 35 passing yards. That's a lot of yards.
Raise your hand if you knew Hawaii was 6-2.
So my wife is a Seminole fan. She had a pretty good day. Florida loses, Miami loses, and I went to Wake, so she just beat her husband's team by 1 million.
This is Josh from Auburn. I would just like to quote the great poet, Lil Wayne. I hate to watch us blow, but I love to watch Hugh leave.
Hi, Dan and Ty. My boyfriend said that he proposed to me if I got on Solid Verbal, so I just watched them win, and they're the best team in the country. Toodaloo.
Whoa! All
you
right.
Gotta think these things through, though. Don't rush in. Enjoy that just boyfriend, girlfriend. Like, that's great.
I mean, we have been adjacent to many a life moment, life
That's
accomplishment, life milestone.
Turkeys being inseminated. Yeah.
We've had all sorts of stuff sent in to us. Thank you to everybody who sent in those voice messages, took time out of your busy Saturday to give us a call at 855-VERBAL-3. And big thanks to our guy Shay again for cutting those up and doing such a good job like he does every week, Dan. It's been a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you.
As fun as it was and different and exciting as it was to kind of do this thing on my own last week. It's better to have company doing this.
Constantly interrupting you and pushing you to an uncomfortable degree.
It's okay. That's what we're all about here. We've got one final thing that I think we need to do on this show, Dan.
Of course.
Who gets our dude alerts for Week 10?
Only mentioned it briefly, but Michigan struggled with Purdue. Jordan Marshall did not struggle with Purdue.
No.
He was the pace setter for the Wolverines. He is a dude. Darian Mensah at Duke went off. Jamari Taylor, we mentioned, for Virginia. Jeff Sims, an absolute dude on the ground. Caleb Hawkins, absolute dude on the ground. Deuce Robinson, whose first name is very close to the word dude. An honor to give him a dude alert, and he was very good for Florida State, connecting with Big Tommy C. College football's one true Jordan Hudson, the receiver for SMU, had a terrific game against Miami. We mentioned Owen McCown, and I think you have to prepare a sound for me right now, if you have it at the ready. Cade Klubnik, Diego Pavia, Haynes King, and Anthony Calandria in a losing. We're dudes.
They were dudes
for about
losing
4,400 yards between them today in losing.
That's right.
Efforts. Yeah.
All righty, folks. Well, there you have it.
Yes.
That is your Week 10 recap episode. Of course, email us whenever you want, solidverbal@gmail.com. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe so that you do not miss any of our episodes. And last but not least, verballers.com is where you can go if you want to further support what Dan and I do. I bring that up because you can vote at 7 a.m. in the new Verballer Top 12 poll. Get ahead of the new Top 12 that is going to be dropped by the playoff committee on Tuesday night. So we'll have an actual poll to react to. Maybe they will be reacting to our poll. As I have said time and again, all of the polls have gradually merged and begun to look a little bit more like the Verballer Top 12, the smartest poll in all of college football.
Like pet owners and their dachshunds. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So listen, make sure you get in on that action if you're ever so inclined, verballers.com. Again, follow or subscribe, and do stay tuned for the coaching carousel game that we got dropping at some point on Monday, Dan.
Yes.
All righty, that does it. Thank you to one and all. We will talk more about the Utah-Cincinnati game on the Tuesday episode. We've got games to discuss on the Tuesday episode. What is to come in Week 11 and beyond. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thank you for joining us late. For those of you out there who subscribe, who listen, who tell their friends, of course, we are very appreciative. Until next time, stay solid.
Peace.